I also don't think that there needs to be 17 different steps to fix your brain. I mean, sure, there's plenty of methods out there that will say, like, here's a great way to change how your brain works. But some of them are super complex or, frankly, super expensive. And I don't think it necessarily always has to be that way. I think that you do have the tools to be able to pretty easily change how your own brain operates so that you can just enjoy your own brain space a little bit more. Welcome to the Love Your Brain podcast, the podcast designed for everyday people who are ready to hop off the negative thought hamster wheel and enjoy a less hostile environment in their own brains. Our brains are where we live our entire lives, and I'm on a mission to help people see that they have everything they need to make it a happier place to be. So join us for this episode of the Love Your Brain podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Love Your Brain podcast, or welcome if you're new. I'm so happy to have you. Now, this is a part of a series that we've been doing called The Lies That I Believed, which has been a multiple series part. If you have not heard those episodes, definitely go back and check them out. I think it will give you a good framework to start from in order to really fully understand what we're talking about today, because what we are going to be talking about today is basically how to change those lies. And when I say lies, again, these are really just beliefs that may have been ingrained in you that either relate to your identity and who you are, or lies about what your future would look like. And I really do think if you can listen to those episodes, it will give you a good idea of where we're starting from when we're going into this methodology that we are talking about today. Because today I'm going to basically show you how to change those beliefs, how to change those beliefs to something that you do want to believe versus just succumbing to beliefs that were ingrained in you, maybe from your childhood. And it's not that hard. That's where I want to start today is it can feel very daunting when we think about these beliefs that we had maybe again from childhood that you've had your whole life. It can be very daunting to think about, oh my gosh, how am I going to change that belief that I've believed my whole life about myself or about my future? But really, it doesn't have to be super hard. And there are like 90 million different ways that you could go about this. I have personally experienced a lot of different methodologies that have worked at conquering these. So please don't think this is the one and only way, but I do think it's one of the easiest ways to change how our brains operate. So today, we are going to take the lies that we've believed and I'm going to show you how to turn it around. And when it comes to some of these lies that I personally believed, they're basically thoughts that had turned into beliefs, which means that they were more ingrained in our brains than just, say, a thought, for example. A thought could come and go, but a belief has more weight to it because we've thought it many times over, or it was something that happened to us in a very monumental experience that caused it to become a belief for us very quickly. And what that means is that if we are talking about neural pathways, beliefs are like well established paths in our brains that have been well traveled. That when our brains are just working on default, they're just going to keep using that same path every time, that same neural pathway every time, unless we take measures to help it go down a different path. And then once we have that new path established and we train our brains to keep going down that path enough times, it will become a new belief system and thus our new default. And this will make more sense as we talk through some of examples here. But what I'm going to be sharing with you today is what I call the quick and easy way to get there, because I also don't think that there needs to be 17 different steps to fix your brain. I mean, sure, there's plenty of methods out there that will say, like, here's a great way to change how your brain works. But some of them are super complex or, frankly, super expensive. And I don't think it necessarily always has to be that way. I think that you do have the tools to be able to pretty easily change how your own brain operates so that you can just enjoy your own brain space a little bit more. It really, really shouldn't be that difficult. So let's just break it down in terms of these easy steps that we're going to go over today. And I do want to say too, this is really helpful as well, not just when you're talking about belief systems, but even if you're someone that's just struggling with being stuck in a negative thought spiral in general, I think this is a really easy method too, because it's something that literally you can do in one day that can change the direction that you're moving. And when you're stuck in a negative thought spiral, that's really all you need is you just need something to kind of pivot you into a different direction and not feel like you're having to climb Mount Everest to get there. I really do think that just doing this one exercise could really help you stop that negative thought spiral just in one day. Now, will that whole belief system be different in one day? Probably not. But you can definitely start pointing your brain in the direction you want it to go and changing the direction you're moving forward, which can make all the difference for how your future thought life is going to look. When you think about like a car or a boat or any moving thing, when it's moving in one direction, it's pointing and it's going forward and it's going to end up in say location A. But if you slightly turn it to a different direction, so it's pointing in a different direction, as it moves forward, it may not seem that far initially, but the further that it goes down that path, it could end up in a whole different place. And that's how I like to see how we change our brain's operating system, because it may not feel like a big change initially just to think differently. But over time, you'll start to see it actually is going to end up in a very different place if we continue to repeat that process. So, just how easy is this? Well, let me show you how. I'll show you how in a couple different ways, but let me start by just giving you the framework. So, the idea here is if you're going to have a thought or a belief, we're going to call it a negative thought because that's typically what we're trying to change is we're trying to change something from a negative thought to a positive thought because that's what truly changes our experience in our own brains. So if you take a negative thought, say, for example, the negative thought is, I'm just going to pick a random one. The negative thought or belief could be maybe someone told you at some point that you were a bad parent. Maybe it was your parent telling you you were a bad parent, or a partner, or maybe that's just something you started to believe based off of what society was telling you at the time. You've now started to believe that you are a bad parent. So that's where we're starting from, is that belief. I am a bad parent. So, the first step of this process is simply to decide what is the thought that I want to have in place of that thought? What do I want to think instead of that thought? And I do usually say, make it easy for yourself. Just simply flip it. I want to be a good parent. I want to believe that I am a good parent. Don't overcomplicate this and totally change the whole thought. Just simply flip it on the opposite. What would be the opposite of that? So if I was believing before that I am a bad parent, what's the opposite of that? It would be believing that I am a good parent. And then we start our day with that. That's the belief that I would like to have is I am a good parent. So what is the next step? We need to find evidence. Don't overcomplicate this either. This is so easy. You don't have to do anything different. Literally, all you are doing is you are looking for evidence. So, as you move about your day, you are going to take note of every time you see evidence of that belief or that thought. So, the one that we are trying to reinforce today is I am a good parent. So, you are a parent going about your day. You go in and you gently wake up your kid for school. Maybe you make them some breakfast and, give them a hug before they get on the bus. I can think of a few different pieces of evidence just in those things alone that could be evidence that you are a good parent. And I always tell people find a way to actually record this because it does help our brain hold on to that information more firmly so that it doesn't just come and go. So, you could write it on a piece of paper if you want. I think it's super easy just to use like the notes feature on your phone because most of us almost always have our phones with us. So just take your phone out, make a note. I made breakfast for my kid. I gave them a hug before I sent them off to school. I made sure they had their homework in their backpack. That is all evidence that you are a good parent. And you continue that throughout your day, finding every little thing that would confirm that belief for you that you are a good parent. Then at the end of the day, you review all of that evidence, and I can guarantee you are going to be shocked. You're going to be shocked at how much evidence there is to believe something that maybe at the beginning of the day you weren't so sure that you believed. Now, of course, there's probably going to be a few things in there that you're like, oh man, I did X, Y, or Z, and now I feel like not a great parent. But typically, when you are looking for those pieces of evidence that you are a good parent, you're going to start finding a lot more that maybe you even missed every other day that's passed up until now. A lot of those things you're going to start seeing because you're looking for them and you're recording them. I almost feel like it's like a fun little point system where, like, I don't know, I feel like excited, like I got a point in a game every time I find a new piece of evidence and I can record it down. So make it fun for yourself trying to find that evidence. And then again, at the end of the day, look at all that evidence that you have. And it's as easy as that. That is how we start changing how our brains operate. We figure out the negative thought that we don't want to have or the negative belief that we don't want to have. What is that lie that you've been told that you've believed? Okay, now what's the opposite? What is the opposite thought that you do want to have, that you do want to believe? And then find pre existing evidence in your day to confirm that and record it. That's all. It's that easy. And if we do that practice every day for multiple days, we are starting to actually create new neural pathways in our brain so that the default of our brain isn't always going to be going down that negative thought process. It's going to start to learn that it needs to go down this other thought process to confirm this belief that you do believe this new positive thought that you're wanting to confirm in your brain. Again, it's not difficult. That is how we create new neural pathways in our brain, new thought processes that can completely transform how our brains operate and how we experience our thought life in our brain. So it's not constantly this negative narrative about what an awful person we are or terrible parent or whatever it is. It actually becomes a place where we start to think, my word, I actually like who I am. I actually like the way I do things. It's really, really cool to see that transformation take place. And for me, I spoke about this a little bit in previous episodes, but it was very transformative for me to take some of the lies that I had believed for so long. For example, something as simple as I am too sensitive. I flipped that script, that belief, that negative belief of I am too sensitive. I changed that to be I am perfectly sensitive. I am the perfect amount of sensitive that I need to be. And I went through my day looking for evidence to confirm that thought. So, what are some pieces of evidence I found? When someone was hurting, I felt empathy for them and was able to intervene because of that sensitivity. I was able to laugh at some funny stuff that had come up in a conversation because I am sensitive and I really take in information and things around me easily. Another example would be in a conversation with multiple people, one person would be talking about something challenging, but everyone else is kind of having a very easygoing conversation, and I'm the one in the conversation that can cue in that that person's actually really, really struggling, and be able to pull them aside and be like, hey, do you want to talk about that? Which is something not everybody can do, but it was perfectly what that person needed in the moment to be seen and heard and recognized for the struggle that they were in. So again, I get to the end of my day and I can look back at all of these pieces of evidence where my sensitivity served me in that situation and actually was a gift. It was perfect. My level of sensitivity was exactly what I needed. Another example you heard me talk about in previous episodes was when I was younger and they would say that I was too muscular to do X, Y, and Z, that I was building muscle too quickly. Well, that's the negative belief that I am too muscular. So, what would be The opposite of that is I am perfectly muscular for who I need to be. I have the perfect amount of muscle for who I need to be. And so, again, I go through my day taking note of all of the pieces of evidence that I find to confirm that belief. So, I was able to carry all my groceries in one trip. We all hope and pray for that, right? That is because of muscle and my muscle endurance. That shows me that I have a great amount of muscle. It's the perfect amount of muscle for me to be able to get my groceries in one trip. Or I slightly trip on the sidewalk and I'm able to catch myself. That is another piece of evidence that shows me that those muscles I have are serving me. They're keeping me up so I didn't fall down. Or something as simple as I was able to pick up my kid and play with them. That is thanks to the muscle that I have. There are so many pieces of evidence that we can find in every day to confirm some of these beliefs that we're trying to change. So, if you are someone who maybe you listened to some of those previous episodes and thought, oh my word, I also have so many lies that I've been believing that have really been slowing me down and creating just a negative space in my own brain, and I want to change that. I'm hoping these tools will give you the steps, the very easy steps, to be able to start changing those thoughts, those beliefs, those neural pathways in your own brain so that you can create an environment in your own brain that you actually enjoy. And it doesn't have to be complicated. There are so many different ways that we can do this. But by simply identifying the negative belief that you have, the negative lie that you believed, turning it on its head, finding what is the opposite belief that you do want to believe, and then finding pieces of evidence and recording it each day so that you can find all of the evidence in your daily life that you are, in fact, that positive belief that you're trying to reinforce. That is going to change the course of where your brain goes every day and how you see yourself as a person. And let me tell you, once you can see how amazing you are and all of the gifts that you give to yourself and to the world, it's a total game changer in terms of just enjoying your life and enjoying your interactions with others and really feeling like you can show up in the world and be a gift to the world and serve the world in a more powerful way because you're actually leaning into the amazingness of who you are. And you do have amazingness to offer. So try this exercise this week. Give it a whirl. I think it could be a total game changer, but all it takes is just one day of trying it. See if it works for you. If it doesn't, okay. But if it does, you now have a tool that you can implement to truly change how your brain operates and figure out how you can start believing differently about yourself and about your future. Have a great week, guys. I hope you found something helpful here today on the Love Your Brain podcast. Maybe a laugh or a feeling of validation, or maybe just a few moments to have company while you do your laundry. Whatever you take from it, I hope you enjoyed your time and leave feeling empowered to be more you every day. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on the next episode, and leave a review. I'd love to hear what you think. Have a great one.